My sister tried to ruin my wedding by announcing her pregnancy during my speech. She had no idea I was holding a secret that would end her marriage before the cake was even cut. The silence that followed my words was a physical thing, a heavy blanket that smothered the joyous chatter of my own wedding reception. It was more profound than any shout, more shocking than any scream. 150 guests, my closest friends and family, stared at me, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths, their smiles dissolving like sugar in rain. My new husband, Eric, squeezed my hand under the table, a silent anchor in the storm I had just unleashed. Across the room, my sister Ava's face was a perfect portrait of disbelief. Her triumphant, beaming smile, the one she had plastered on just moments before while hijacking my moment, had curdled into a mask of confusion. Her hand, which had been resting lovingly on her barely there baby bump, was now frozen in place. Her husband, Mark, sitting beside her, looked like he'd seen a ghost. His skin, usually tanned and healthy, was a pale, clammy gray. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He couldn't. What did you just say?" Ava's voice was a whisper, but in the crushing silence, it carried across the room like a siren. I lifted the microphone again, my hand surprisingly steady. "I just said," I enunciated clearly, my voice cold and calm, "that I'm sure Jessica is just as thrilled as we are." I turned my head slightly to look at a table near the front, where one of Ava's best friends, Jessica, was sitting. Her face was ashen, a splash of red wine blooming across the white tablecloth in front of her where she'd knocked over her glass. That was the moment it all shattered. The confusion on Ava's face morphed into dawning, gut-wrenching horror. It was a terrible, beautiful thing to watch. This was the consequence she had never seen coming. This was the check for a debt she'd been running up her entire life, a debt she had forced me to pay time and time again. But to understand how a bride, in her white dress, on the happiest day of her life, could choose to detonate a bomb of this magnitude, you have to understand the war that preceded it. This wasn't a spontaneous act of cruelty. It was a carefully considered, long overdue counteroffensive. And it all started long before the wedding. My sister Ava and I were born 2 years apart, but we might as well have been from different planets. Ava was the sun, bright, loud, demanding to be the center of our family's universe. And my parents were happy to oblige, orbiting her every whim. I was the moon, quieter, more reflective, content with my own light, but often overshadowed by her brilliance. When Ava got an A on a test, the whole family went out for ice cream. When I got an A, my mom would say, "That's nice, honey. See? Ava's a great role model for you." Her need for the spotlight was insatiable. I remember my 10th birthday party. I'd been so excited for my unicorn-themed cake. As I was about to blow out the candles, Ava, then 12, suddenly feigned a dramatic fall, wailing that she'd twisted her ankle. The rest of my party was spent with my parents hovering over her on the couch, bringing her ice packs and juice, while my friends awkwardly ate their cake and left. Her ankle, of course, was miraculously fine the next day. This was the pattern of our lives. My moments, big or small, were merely opportunities for her to create a bigger one for herself. My high school graduation was overshadowed by her very public, very dramatic breakup with her boyfriend in the parking lot. My first art show was interrupted by her tearful announcement that she was thinking of moving to another state, a notion that was forgotten a week later. When I met Eric, I felt for the first time like I was the sun in someone's sky. He saw me, not as Ava's little sister, but as Arya. He loved my quiet nature, celebrated my art, and encouraged me to take up space. When he proposed during a trip to the coast, on a cliff overlooking the ocean at sunset, it was the most perfect moment of my life. I called my parents to tell them the news, my voice shaking with happiness. Their first question? "Oh, wonderful. How do you think Ava will take it?" Ava's reaction was predictably, "Ava." When I showed her the ring, a beautiful, simple sapphire that Eric had designed himself, she glanced at it for a second, before holding up her own hand. "Mark and I were talking about rings the other day. He knows I want a much bigger diamond, but yours is cute." For the next year, every step of the wedding planning process became a battleground. She was my maid of honor, a decision my mother had insisted upon for the sake of family harmony. It was the least harmonious year of my life. When I picked out my wedding dress, a classic elegant A-line gown, Ava told me it was a bit matronly, and that she'd seen a much more fashionable mermaid-style dress that would have looked better. When we went bridesmaid dress shopping, she vetoed every color and style I liked, complaining they didn't flatter her skin tone. We ended up with a bland beige color she picked, which she then complained was boring. She was late to every appointment, from cake tastings to venue tours. She'd sigh dramatically through meetings with vendors, texting on her phone and offering unsolicited opinions designed to undermine my confidence. "Are you sure about roses, Arya? They're so cliché. Peonies are much more sophisticated." Or, "This venue is nice, I guess. A bit small, though. Mark and I want a much bigger wedding when we get married." Everything was a comparison, a competition that only existed in her head. Eric saw it all, his frustration growing with each passive-aggressive comment. "Why do you let her treat you like that?" he'd ask me in the car on the way home. "Because it's easier than fighting," I'd reply, the familiar excuse tasting like ash in my mouth. "It's just Ava." The discovery of the affair was a complete accident. It was about 3 months before the wedding. I was at Ava and Mark's apartment. Ava had dragged me along on a pointless shopping trip for wedding accessories that had really just been an excuse for her to buy a new handbag. While we were out, she got a frantic call from her work and had to rush back to the office, leaving me at their place to wait for my taxi. "Just lock up when you leave," she'd called over her shoulder. While I was waiting, I saw Mark's laptop open on the kitchen counter. There was a browser window open to a jewelry website, showing a delicate gold necklace. My heart softened for a moment. Mark could be frustrating, often acting as Ava's passive enabler, but I knew he loved her. I thought maybe he was buying her a gift to apologize for some recent argument they'd had. Curious, I leaned closer to see the engraving options. That's when I saw the other tabs open in the browser. One was his email. The most recent message at the top of his inbox was from a name I recognized, Jessica Riley. Jessica was one of Ava's closest friends, part of their tight-knit circle since college. The subject line was simply, "Tonight." A cold dread washed over me. It was none of my business. I should close the laptop and walk away. But I couldn't. My finger moved as if of its own accord, clicking on the email. The message was short. "Can't wait to see you. Same place. I've missed you like crazy. Jay." My blood ran cold. It could be innocent, I told myself. It was probably innocent. But my gut was screaming at me. I clicked back to the main inbox. There were dozens of emails from her. I opened another one from a few weeks prior. This one was longer. It was a love letter. It spoke of stolen moments, of the electricity between them, of how hard it was to see Ava and pretend everything was normal. It mentioned specific dates, specific places, a hotel bar downtown, a work trip Mark had taken last month. There was no ambiguity, no room for misunderstanding. Mark was cheating on my sister with her best friend, and it wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a full-blown affair. I felt sick to my stomach. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. My first instinct was pure, white-hot rage on behalf of my sister. How could he do this to her, and Jessica? How could she betray her supposed best friend? But then, a more complicated feeling began to bubble up. This was a secret, a heavy, toxic bomb. And I was the one holding it. My taxi arrived, and I left their apartment in a daze. The entire ride home, my mind raced. I had to tell Ava. She deserved to know. But when? If I told her now, 3 months before my wedding, the fallout would be catastrophic. Her drama would consume everything. My wedding, the one day that was supposed to be mine, would be completely and utterly eclipsed by her heartbreak. My parents would be involved, the family would be in turmoil, and all the focus would shift to Ava, the victim. Again. When I got home, Eric found me sitting on our couch in the dark, staring at the wall. I told him everything. He listened patiently, his expression hardening as I spoke. He wasn't surprised by Mark's betrayal, but he was furious on my behalf. Wow, he said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm so sorry, Arya. For Ava, and for you. You shouldn't have to carry this." "What do I do, Eric?" I whispered into his chest. "If I tell her, my wedding is over. Not literally, but it might as well be. It will become the tragedy of Ava's broken heart, featuring Arya's wedding. And if I don't tell her, I'm letting her live a lie. I'm letting that snake Mark stand up at our wedding, pretending to be a happy, supportive brother-in-law." "There's no good answer," he said softly, stroking my hair. Whatever you decide, I support you. We can tell her together tonight, or we can wait. It's your call. But you need to think about yourself too, for once. For the next few weeks, I lived with the secret festering inside me. I watched Ava, looking for an opening, a moment of closeness where I could break the news gently. But those moments never came. Instead, her pre-wedding sabotage campaign ramped up. It was as if she could sense that my focus was wavering, and she couldn't stand it. She forgot to mail out a batch of invitations, which I only discovered when friends called to ask if they were invited. She argued with me about the playlist for the reception, insisting on adding a dozen of her and Mark's favorite slow songs. "It's about celebrating love, Arya," she'd said condescendingly, "not just your love." The final straw, the incident that solidified my decision, happened at my bachelorette party a week before the wedding. It was supposed to be a low-key weekend at a spa resort with my closest friends. Ava, as maid of honor, was in charge of the planning. She booked a suite for us, and the first night was wonderful. We laughed, we drank champagne, we reminisced. I felt relaxed and happy for the first time in months. On the second day, I woke up to find Ava on the phone, speaking in a hushed, urgent tone. When she saw me, she quickly hung up. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she snapped. "Just work stuff." Later that day, as we were lounging by the pool, a group of 5 women I didn't know showed up. They were loud, already drunk, and wearing matching t-shirts that said, "A VA's Entourage." It turned out Ava had invited her own friends to crash my bachelorette party. My quiet, relaxing spa weekend was instantly transformed into a chaotic, booze-fueled party that I hadn't asked for and didn't want. My friends were pushed to the side as Ava and her crew took over, controlling the music, ordering rounds of shots, and turning the entire event into a celebration of her. I confronted her in our suite that evening. "Why would you do that, Ava? This was supposed to be my weekend." She rolled her eyes, her classic move to dismiss any feeling I ever had. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Arya. I just livened things up a bit. Your friends are a little boring, don't you think? I was just trying to make it fun." "It was fun before you decided to make it your party," I said, my voice rising. "Just like everything else in my life. You can't stand it when the attention isn't on you for 5 minutes, can you? Not even for my wedding." Her expression turned cold. "You know what your problem is, Arya? You're ungrateful. I have put so much time and energy into being your maid of honor, and all you do is complain. This wedding has been so stressful for me. Mark and I have been trying for a baby for months, and with all this stress, it's just not happening. So forgive me if I wanted to blow off a little steam. Not everything is about you." That was it. That was the moment the tumblers clicked into place. The stress of my wedding was too much for her. She was incapable of seeing beyond the tip of her own nose. In that moment, I didn't feel sorry for the bomb I was holding. I felt a cold, clear sense of purpose. She didn't deserve my protection. She deserved the truth, and she deserved to get it in a way she would never ever be able to upstage. I told Eric my plan that night when I got home. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. I thought he was going to tell me it was a horrible, cruel idea. Instead, he took my hand. "She's made her bed," he said, his voice firm. "She's spent your whole life walking all over you. If she tries to pull one more stunt to make our wedding day about her, then you have my full support. This is where it ends. No more being a doormat." The morning of the wedding was surreal. I went through the motions of getting my hair and makeup done, of slipping into my beautiful dress. Ava was there, of course, fluttering around me, playing the part of the perfect, doting sister for the cameras. "You look beautiful, Chloe," she'd say, while simultaneously telling the makeup artist that my lipstick was the wrong shade. "Are you nervous?" "Don't be nervous." I was so calm on my wedding day, I watched her, and I watched Mark, who arrived with Eric and the groomsmen. He looked handsome in his tux, a perfect smile plastered on his face. He kissed Ava, and she preened, oblivious. He caught my eye for a fraction of a second, and I saw a flicker of something... guilt? Fear? Before he looked away. He knew that I knew. I wasn't sure how he knew, but I could feel it. Maybe it was the way I'd been cold and distant to him for the past 3 months. He knew I was a threat. but he was betting on my lifelong habit of keeping the peace. It was a bad bet. The ceremony was beautiful. Standing opposite Eric, saying my vows, I felt a profound sense of peace. This was real. He was my future. And for the first time, I felt strong enough to protect it, and myself. The reception started off perfectly. The food was delicious, the music was great, and everyone was laughing and dancing. Eric and I had our first dance, and for those 3 minutes, the world and all its drama melted away. It was just us. But I knew what was coming. I could feel it in the air. Ava was getting restless. She'd been flitting from table to table, her voice getting louder, her laughter more forced. She was waiting for her moment. It came during the speeches. My dad went first, giving a sweet, heartfelt toast. Then Eric's best man gave a hilarious, slightly inappropriate speech that had the whole room roaring with laughter. And then it was my turn. Eric and I had decided to give a joint thank you. He started, thanking our parents and our guests for coming. Then he passed the microphone to me. I started by thanking the bridal party, my friends who had been so supportive. I was about to thank my parents when I saw it happen. Ava stood up from her seat at the head table. She swayed slightly, putting a hand to her forehead. Mark stood up with her, looking concerned. "Are you okay, honey?" I just feel a little faint," she said, her voice just loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. She took the spare microphone from the DJ's table. My heart started pounding. This was it, the final provocation. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, Arya," she said into the microphone, her voice trembling slightly. Everyone's attention was now on her. I'm feeling so emotional today. Seeing my little sister get married. It's just so beautiful." She started to cry, real tears welling in her eyes. Mark put a comforting arm around her. Mark and I have some news of our own that we just can't keep to ourselves any longer." She looked at Mark, who nodded with a practiced, loving smile. She turned back to the crowd, placing her other hand on her stomach. "We're pregnant." The room erupted. There were cheers, applause, gasps of delight. People didn't realize the context. They just heard happy news. My parents were beaming, my mother already dabbing her eyes. Ava was soaking it all in, her face a mask of radiant, tear-streaked joy. She had done it. She had successfully made my wedding reception her baby shower. She had taken my one day, my one moment, and stolen it right out from under me in front of everyone I knew. She looked at me, a smug, triumphant glint in her eyes that said, "Top that." Eric squeezed my hand. I looked at him, and he gave me the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. That was all I needed. I raised my microphone. The applause for Ava and Mark was just starting to die down. "Wow, Ava," I said, my voice ringing out, clear and steady. The room quieted, turning their attention back to me. "What wonderful news." I let the silence hang in the air for a beat. I smiled, a wide, bright smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Congratulations. That's just incredible. I mean, we're all so happy for you. My new husband and I, my parents." I paused, letting my eyes sweep the room before they landed, with surgical precision, on Jessica's table. And I'm sure Jessica is just as thrilled to finally be an auntie. The silence that followed was what I remembered first. Utter, complete, deafening silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Jessica's wine glass toppled over. The red stain spread across the white linen like a fresh wound. And that's when Ava's world broke. Her face, which had been glowing with smug satisfaction, crumpled. What did you just say?" she stammered, her voice a ghost of its previous strength. I kept the microphone to my lips. I was the one in control now. I repeated, my voice as cold and sharp as ice. "I'm sure Jessica is thrilled. Isn't that right, Mark?" Every eye in the room swiveled from me to Mark. He was frozen, a statue of a man, all the color drained from his face. He looked at Jessica, whose face was buried in her hands, and then at Ava, who was staring at him with a look of dawning animal terror. "Mark?" Ava's voice was a tiny, broken thing. "What is she talking about?" Mark? He couldn't speak. He just stood there, his guilt a visible shroud. And in his silence, everyone got their answer. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. The joyous atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by something thick with shock and shame. Ava let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob, not quite a scream. It was the sound of a heart breaking in real time. She turned and fled. She ran, as best she could in her heels and tight dress, out of the reception hall, her wails echoing behind her. My mother, her face a mask of fury and confusion, shot me a look of pure venom before rushing after her. My father followed, looking utterly lost. Mark stood alone at the head table for a moment longer, looking around at the 150 pairs of eyes judging him. Then he too turned and walked out, not even glancing in Jessica's direction. The party was over. Eric took the microphone from my hand. "Well," he said, to the stunned room, his voice calm and strong. "As it turns out, we have a little extra time for dancing. The bar is open. Everyone, a few people let out awkward laughs. The DJ, a true professional, put on a generic pop song. But no one danced. The room had been poisoned. Guests started quietly gathering their things, coming up to us to offer whispered, awkward congratulations and even more awkward goodbyes. My aunts and uncles shot me looks that ranged from pity to disgust. But a few people, a couple of my cousins and my closest friends, came up and hugged me. "I can't believe you did that," my best friend whispered in my ear. "But my God, she deserved it." Within an hour, the room was nearly empty. It was just me, Eric, and the ruins of my wedding reception. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt hollowed out, but also calm. I felt like I had finally, after 28 years, stood up for myself. I had drawn a line in the sand, not with a stick, but with a lit match. "Let's get out of here," Eric said, taking my hand. He led me out a side door, away from the lingering family members who were huddled in the lobby, no doubt debating the precise nature of my monstrousness. We got into the waiting car and drove away from the venue, away from the wreckage. "Are you okay?" he asked, his thumb rubbing circles on the back of my hand. "I think so," I said, looking out at the city lights. "I feel free." The days that followed were a hurricane of familial rage. My phone blew up with calls and texts, all from my parents and relatives. I was selfish. I was cruel. I was a monster. How could I have ruined my sister's life like that? How could I have been so vindictive on my wedding day? My mother was the worst. "She's pregnant," she shrieked at me over the phone. "Pregnant and alone. Because of you. Mark has left her. He packed his bags and left. Are you happy now, Arya? You finally got what you always wanted. You finally destroyed your sister. Ava and Mark destroyed their own marriage, Mom," I said, my voice weary. I had repeated this line a dozen times. I just turned on the lights so they could see what they were doing. "You did it out of jealousy. You've always been jealous of her." That's when I finally snapped. Jealous? Jealous of what? Her need to make every single moment about herself? I spent my entire childhood, my entire life, being her supporting actress. I just wanted one day. One day that was about me and the man I love. And she couldn't even give me that. She stood up at my wedding to announce her pregnancy. She did that to hurt me, to steal my joy. Don't you dare call me jealous. I'm just done. I hung up and blocked her number. I blocked my dad's too. I needed space. I needed to breathe. Eric was my rock. He fielded calls. He screened texts. He held me when I cried. Not for my sister, but for the family I wished I had. We went on our honeymoon, a quiet week in a cabin by a lake, and we didn't talk about Ava or Mark or any of it. We talked about our future. We hiked, we cooked, we reconnected. We started our marriage on our own terms, away from the toxicity. When we came back, reality was waiting. Ava had moved back in with my parents. Mark had moved in with Jessica. The divorce was going to be messy. I learned through the family grapevine that the baby was, in fact, Mark's. He wasn't contesting that. He just didn't want to be married to Ava anymore. The affair, he'd apparently told people, was an escape from her constant drama and narcissism. In a twisted way, I had set him free too. About 6 months after the wedding, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Ava. "Can we talk?" I met her at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop halfway between my apartment and my parents' house. She was visibly pregnant now, her face puffy from crying. She looked smaller, somehow. The brilliant sun had dimmed. She didn't apologize. I didn't expect her to. That wasn't in her nature. Instead, She blamed me. You ruined my life, she said, her voice flat. I hope you're happy. You got your revenge. I took a slow sip of my latte before answering. The old me would have apologized, would have tried to smooth things over. But the old me was gone, burned away in the fire of my wedding reception. This isn't what I wanted, Ava, I said calmly. What I wanted was for you to be my sister. I wanted you to be happy for me, just for one day. I wanted you to stop seeing my life as a competition. I kept that secret for 3 months. I agonized over it. I was trying to protect you. But at my bachelorette party, and then again at the reception, you showed me that you have absolutely no respect for me or my feelings. You forced my hand. You could have told me in private, she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. Yes, I could have, I agreed. And what would have happened? My wedding would have been canceled or postponed. The months leading up to it would have become the Ava and Mark drama show. You would have found a way, consciously or not, to make my tragedy bigger than yours. You always do. So I chose to give the truth the same audience you chose for your announcement. It seemed fair. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. I don't think anyone, in her entire life, had ever spoken to her with such brutal honesty. She was searching for a rebuttal, a way to twist my words and make herself the victim again, but she couldn't find one. I hadn't raised my voice. I had simply stated the facts. My baby won't have a father, she said weakly. My baby will have an uncle who lives across town, and who will hopefully be a better man than he was a husband, I corrected her, and that baby will have an aunt who loves them. But that baby's mother and I don't know what we are anymore, Ava, but we're not sisters. Not right now. I stood up, left $10 on the table for our coffees, and walked out. I didn't look back. It's been over a year now. Ava had her baby, a little boy. I've seen him a few times, during brief, supervised visits at a neutral cousin's house. I have a tentative, fragile relationship with my dad, who calls sometimes, but my mother still won't speak to me. The wound is too deep. Ava is a single mom, and from what I hear, she's struggling. Reality is a harsh teacher. For the first time, her life isn't a performance. There's no audience to applaud her. There's just the quiet, demanding, and unrelenting work of motherhood. Sometimes I feel a pang of guilt. I wonder if there was another way, a better way. But then I look at my life with Eric. Our home is peaceful, filled with laughter and my art. Our marriage is strong, built on a foundation of mutual respect that I fought for. I didn't just marry him on my wedding day. I married the idea that I was worthy of respect, that my happiness mattered, that I was allowed to be the center of my own story. I may have lost a sister that day, but I finally, after a lifetime of living in her shadow, found myself. And I wouldn't trade that for anything.